What's up? Welcome to another new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 330. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts, and as always, I'm joined by...
And John.
Did you say something, Ronald?
Yeah, you got quiet.
We got real quiet, man.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, like I saw your lips moving, but I was like, did my ears blink and I missed it, or
That's so weird.
what happened?
You know the way Zoom cuts out sometimes? It was like it dipped on you right when you said Enron.
It's
But
so weird.
But you
That
don't
is
sound
weird.
bad now.
I'm sorry.
It's like if I know who you are, but if someone was watching
Yeah.
this on our YouTube channel, they'd be like, who was that guy? Because
Yeah.
it probably rhymes with John, but I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not.
That's
Or they could be listening on the old-fashioned audio-only version of the show.
yeah.
And
This
in
is
that
true.
case, they might not notice a difference because I would be jacking the levels. But I'm saying whatever was there, even if you jacked it, it wouldn't sound very
It is
good.
what it is. Well,
Yeah.
thank you to people who watched last week. We almost got, I think right at this point, 200 watches, 200 views for
You should call
last
them
week's-
watches. I think that's a better term.
Yeah, just like a
Because
pile
we're
of
hip. We're super
watches.
cool with the YouTube stuff. So like
Yeah.
watches. Honestly,
Watches.
that's what we're using.
Yeah.
That does sound like, what is it, Variety that has all the crazy speak?
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like watches would be instead of views.
That's
That's
good.
great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, seriously.
It probably means you tagged it well, Ronald. So I'm going to tip my hat, my virtual
I've
hat
been-
or my imaginary hat to you.
So the advice that I've been getting is simplified. You make whatever the main subject is the title, and then everything else will be in the artwork. So that seems to be the move.
You don't want to
Cool.
call it Cosby Schmosby? You don't think that would have been smart?
And thank you for the listener who has just given us their extended opinion on the Cosby in both the clip and the full version. Thank you. We welcome all opinions.
This seems to be a person who's searching for the word Cosby and leaving that comment on every video that comes up, I think. So
Copy paste.
right.
But I'm good with it. I'm good with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, man. Hey, engagement. That's what they is. That's what they
Hell
say,
yeah.
right?
Hell yeah.
And just imagine if someone actually engages with them, how exciting that will be.
Right.
As I create my anonymous YouTube account.
You're right.
There will soon be another comment on the video, Ronald. I promise you.
That's exciting.
So yeah, today's going to be kind of like a, I don't know, catch up, a mix match. I don't know, mix and match episode. We're kind of got a couple things going here. We're going to circle back to a movie that came out around the holidays that I think Ronald saw, but I finally saw after it came on to Disney Plus, and that's Encanto. And then Ronald and John are going to talk a little bit about Nightmare Alley. Ronald's going to tell us what he thought of House of Gucci. And I don't know, a couple other little things we're going to pepper throughout the episode. But before we get to those conversations, there's a couple of news items, some trailers that came out over the last week that I think we wanted to kind of bring up and kind of just bounce off of one another. What's kind of struck your fancy this past week, Ronald? What's the one you want to bring up?
Halo. Paramount Plus is Halo. The video game turned TV show Halo, which people thought was purchased in the Bungie thing, which is not true because Bungie actually made the first iteration of Halo, and then 434 Studios took it over. So they own that. So they didn't get it in the acquisition that Sony did. So there's a lot of video game wars that are actually going to start affecting TV at some point. We'll talk about that once it all unfolds. But Halo is on Paramount Plus in all its sci-fi glory. And I mean, I got to be honest, like, I don't know what I expected it to look like, but if there were to be a TV version of Master Chief, this would be it. It literally is a shot for shot sort of thing. Like the outfits look the same, the monsters look the same, the weapons are the same, the vehicles look the same. It's a pretty cool adaptation if you're a fan of Halo, or even interested. If you've even seen a commercial, you've been interested?
No, I'm raising my hand.
What's called
I have a question.
Sure.
Because this is a safe space. Tell me in 2 sentences what Halo is about.
Halo is about a gentleman named Master Chief that is essentially, he's essentially like a android that was sent to pretty much help this democracy of this planet. There's there's this takeover that's happening, and they send Master Chief to kick some ass. But the thing is, Master Chief's starting to kind of become aware that he is a weapon of this organization. And that kind of plays into some of his conflict. But it's a good show. I mean, it's a good story. Honestly, some people just watch the cutscenes as a movie because they're well done.
I feel like that's been my exposure to anything having to do with Halo. Like I again, not a gamer, fell out of that like decades ago. But it's like one of those titles, like when you always hear these conversations about video game adaptations, whether it's to the big screen or television now. Like this is, as an example of that, like it's one of the 2 or 3 that you always hear talking about is in terms of like it needing to be done, getting it done right, it being like IP. We talk about that, like really who wants this, who can have it, who can make it work. And it's kind of crazy, like I don't have much awareness of it, but I have seen a lot of the cutscenes, like whether it's through YouTube videos I've just kind of come upon or some other podcasts or like, video podcasts that I watch that have talked about the show. And then finally seeing the trailer that I think it aired during one of the playoff games this weekend, or at least the partial teaser of it did. And, it looks cool. I mean, it looks interesting. It looks like kind of what I expected it to look like. And like you said, it looks like the game. So, if the story's there in the game, which I don't know, but it seems like, you kind of are vouching for that, having, been there in the game. It's very exciting to see something like that maybe come to a big epic series kind of thing, especially, Paramount Plus, which needs more really flagship content. But yeah, I don't know. It's always been one of those ones that's like, and I don't even know the scope of it comparing to one another, but like that. And now Uncharted's coming out this year. And then, The Last of Us is coming out probably later this year. And like all these big titles that have been like waiting a long time to get adapted.
And a huge one that people didn't even know was a video game, Arcane.
Right.
Arcane is
on
Netflix. Is a smash hit. And people don't even know it's based on a video game, which is even cooler. So I think we're kind of getting into that mode where like things are going to come out. And if it's done well enough, you won't even know that it's based on something, which is pretty damn cool. Man.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of things coming out, like too many possibly, before we recorded, I had mentioned to you guys, I'd asked you guys, like, did you see the teaser for, again, Paramount Plus's The Offer, starring Miles Teller, Matthew Good, Giovanni Ribisi's in it. I don't know, a pretty big, awesome cast.
Don't forget, you've got to say his name. If you get a chance to say Burn Gorman, you have to say Burn Gorman.
Well, you just did, so thank you.
I did. I just picked it up on that one.
But yeah, this has been a pretty big talked about series for them, and it's about the days before or the making of The Godfather. But something that's kind of been in the news a little bit over the last year or so due to some COVID stuff, like on the set having to be shut down, and it's finally coming out, and they finally released a teaser for it this weekend or this past week. John, you saw it, right?
Yeah.
You saw it too, Ronald, right? Yeah. The teaser. What did you guys think of this teaser? Like, did you know this was coming at all?
Oh,
he's like, no.
No, in fact, it was
not me either. For the audio listeners, I shook my head.
It was described. This is how bad it is. It was described to me as a Godfather prequel. I look at it as the making of the movie.
No, guess again. Warmer. No, I mean, it looks like a fun, fast-paced kind of prestige thing. I think I would feel a lot more interested in it if it were a movie and not a series. I don't know. I don't know how much story there is there, but there may be plenty. You might have said the same thing about Pam and Tommy. And I feel like even though it does get a little long at its full length, you can argue that there's a stuff you can do with that as a show that you can't delve into in a movie. So, but I think with the cast and with the subject matter and, I think it looks like, again, it looked like it will be fun to see how they pull off some of these larger than life characters that we've heard all this kind of Hollywood lore about. I don't know how grounded it's going to be, but I guess I have the same question about Pam and Tommy and anything else like that. It's like, I don't know how much of this is based on truth and how much of this is like clever screenwriters kind of having a meal off of what facts we have. But the cast and the roles they're playing, it's fun to see. Like, for instance, is it Jake Fogler? Is that his name? Dan Fogler.
Yeah.
It's Dan Fogler, right?
Fogler, yeah.
Okay. What is the other guy's name? Who I always think he's more of a Disney guy. I always get those two guys confused. Dan Fogler and the guy who does the voice of Olaf. In my mind,
Josh Gad.
Yeah, I get them confused sometimes. But Dan Fogler looks like he's going to be having fun playing Francis Ford Coppola, and that right there feels like it might be reason enough to watch at least an episode.
Yeah.
So, but are you implying that maybe they're kind of trying to sneak this one past us because the buzz is not so great, or maybe they aren't too sure about it, or
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, like I feel like this is a big show for them, and
okay,
a show that had a lot going on around it, both in casting and this is also the one that I want to say initially Armie Hammer was a part of. And he was
Dios mío.
The Miles Teller.
Right. Yeah, he was supposed to be the Miles Teller. What's it? Al Ruddy. He's supposed to be that character, the producer of The Godfather, and with his whole situation, he was removed, and then Miles Teller was cast. So there's been a lot of, whether it's good or bad press around it, it's been going around for a long time, and it's a big show for Paramount Plus, and it's kind of weird because it's a legacy franchise. It's a legacy title that's in their catalog. And what kind of stood out to me about the teaser was like really not until like the final like couple seconds of it are you really kind of understanding that it's about having anything to do with The Godfather.
Right.
And it seems like it seems like the trailer, the teaser, and maybe a new one will come out that's a little better cut, maybe, kind of has more direct, like, we are going to write The Godfather, like, not to be obvious, but like, I feel like you need to do more than just have the theme and like the book's title treatment. You know what I mean? Like for an audience to understand it, or to try to entice an audience that maybe doesn't pick the theme up or understand, just showing a cut of the book is telling us that this is a story about the production of the movie. I think it looks more of like a mob crime type thing than like a Hollywood, how did it happen type thing, which I've read it's kind of like a mashup of the two, but it's something that I'm really interested in watching. I mean, obviously, I love the Godfather films, and for the most part, I'm really into the whole cast, and they look really interesting, and I'm sure that the performances are going to be really good, but it's just a weird teaser for me that, it doesn't really promote that idea that this is a show about the making of The Godfather. And that's a big, like, drum I would be banging if I was like trying to promote this show that 2 out of 3 members of this podcast didn't even know about.
Right.
That seems like a miss for Paramount, who needs, a win right now.
Right. When I've seen like, and not to say anything about this, I know people are saying positive things about the Saved by the Bell reboot, but I've seen like copious amounts of advertising for the Saved by the Bell reboot. And I don't even feel like I'm a person who sees that much advertising that I don't seek out, So the fact that, it wasn't even on the radar. Like, I think today or yesterday, I saw some article about Miles Teller's, that had a picture of Miles Teller that was about this, and the name didn't mean anything to me. Now, of course, in reference to The Godfather, the name The Offer means something, but just on paper or on a web screen, that's what you call your computer, right? A web screen. It was just the name,
web
The Offer,
and watches. We're really getting a vocabulary here today.
But I mean, like, I just was like, oh, okay, I'll check that out. Anything that people are talking about, I'm always like, I'll check that out at some point. But yeah, this was something that it didn't mean anything to me when I saw that there was news about The Offer. So now that I've seen the trailer, when is it coming out?
It's in February. I want to say it's February.
Like this month?
What is it, February or April? I honestly, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Something's February 27th.
Okay.
It's not this though. I think this is actually end of April.
When is Atlanta coming? I know that's soon.
March. That
looks great. Did you see the trailer for that?
I've seen a couple of things. So I've seen the trailer. Donald's also doing stuff, so I've seen like a couple. I've watched it all, is what I'm trying to say. I've watched,
but that long trailer that shows a lot of like clips of them, obviously on tour in Europe, is what it looks like. Well, it just looks insane. It just looks great.
Something we're doing in the future is going to have it accessible for us, so that will be
That's a win. That's not like an angry fist. I just shook. That's a winning fist. Go ahead.
So I was going to say something about The Offer. So I watch a ton of like other podcasts and other, a lot of people that get a lot more access than we have. And I've noticed something, man. There is an inherent bias about things that just aren't Netflix or Hulu. I'm literally, sometimes when it comes up, they'll say like, nobody watches that, so we're not going to talk about it.
Oh, wow.
Which is strange because that's the point of what we do, right? Like we're supposed to, lift a rock to show somebody something that they haven't necessarily had access to. So
it's like, I've always feel like we need to do both things equally. If we're doing it right, we'll be talking about that big new thing that people are talking about, but we'll also be as excited about something that isn't being talked about, so it's weird to say like, that's not popular enough for us to talk about it.
I hear so much, man. I hear so much. And it's, we're one of the few, I mean, this is a weird thing to say it like this, but we're like one of the few outlets that really comes at shows with a pretty open mind, because it's not like that everywhere. Most places it's not. So
we're just undiscerning enough that we receive everything equally.
Right. I think it's payola, man. We're getting nothing under the table for
it. That's true. We're pure.
We're pure. It's all for the love of the game. So
lack of success has kept us pure. That's true. No, but I'm, while we're talking about Paramount Plus in particular, the thing that was just announced, the Bob Odenkirk, David Cross series called Guru Nation. The log line that's very tantalizing is they play rival cult gurus manipulating the minds of their deluded followers. That's those two guys doing that. All right, I'm already hooked. It's going to be directed by Jason Walliner, who did Borat 2, as well as a bunch of your favorite television shows. Just look at what he's worked on, and he's directed an episode of Something You Love. And I think they're co-creating it with Bill Odenkirk, Bob's brother, who has been a Simpsons and Futurama writer. So this is a pretty good comedy pedigree for a show that sounds like a very rich concept. Like we're still close enough to all those cult documentaries from just a couple of years ago that I could see those two guys having a lot of fun, kind of, putting on that kind of narcissistic character. And it says it's a documentary style. So I guess it will either be like a mockumentary straight up style, or maybe just in that Parks and Rec / Office, whatever, Modern Family kind of style of documentary comedy. But anyway, this sounds great. I mean, every now and then you'll hear one of these projects that gets announced and then a couple of years later nothing's happened with it, and you find out it died. Right. This could be one of those, but it also could be one that we're having a lot of fun with in just a year or so. And also it sounds like Bob Odenkirk is back at it full time if he's doing that, developing a series for After Saul. So let's just hope continued good health and recovery to our favorite Odenkirks. Sorry, Bill.
Definitely. I was going to say something when you were mentioning like Ronald talking about like people's like kind of reaction to anything that's not like Netflix or what did you say? Netflix or what?
Hulu.
It's funny you say that because like I was listening to an interview or reading an interview with Jason Kilar, who's like the Warner Media CEO, or at least for now. And he was basically talking about like how, over the last couple of weeks, how like Netflix's stock dropping because of their earnings report kind of coming in under expectations. That like, he was kind of feeling like the reaction was like overreaction, because like the reality of like what these platforms are for the future are like, he finds to be undervalued, in terms of stock prices. But he kind of went on this kind of rant, which I found really interesting, about all of the different platforms, all the different streaming services, and that like eventually how some will fall, and it could happen sooner than later based on like what they do with subscriber counts and programming and things like that. But he was basically saying, which I think I actually totally agree with, that the reality is that there's really going to be a big three, just like there were a big three network, like you had NBC, CBS, and ABC, and now you have, he says, and I kind of agree again, is Netflix, Disney Plus, and HBO Max. And, Hulu probably floats in there too, but Hulu being owned by Disney, like there's going to be something that happens, I think, in the probably near future where Hulu becomes some sort of like automatic bundle or some kind of, it kind of ties together with Disney Plus in some way. Eventually, maybe. But it is an interesting topic because, how people gravitate towards the streaming services, much like, you know, we have subscriptions to so many of them, you know, because like we watch so much content personally and for this podcast. But you know, the average person that, you know, watches 1.2 movies a year in a theater or whatever that stat is, you know, like that translates to like how many subscription services they have, because they really do try to benefit from the idea of it being over the top and not having to have some crazy cable bill. But you know, you have the other side, you know, they're kind of in the middle where like they have 1, 2, 3 maybe, and you know, we have 5, 6 maybe, you know, like, and then there's some that don't have any. It's a little less frequent these days especially because of COVID. But it will be interesting because you do have those conversations with people that you mentioned, Ronald, like, and it is interesting to be like, you know, oh, it's not on Netflix. I mean, I probably won't check it out. Or
right, it's
you know, like I got Disney Plus because my kids love it. Is that Star Wars thing on there? I was like, yeah, you know, oh, cool. Like, you know, it's like there's like a gateway to the top 3 in some way.
I find that Apple TV Plus is oddly out in the cold too, which is weird when you consider the content they have, the production value, the style of it. And there's 3 or 4 things on there that I genuinely love or I'm hooked on at least. Yeah. So it's weird when it's like, I noticed how strange that is. The way this manifests for me is like someone the other day, I said something about Servant and someone said, oh, I love Servant. Is that back? And I was like, yeah. And they said, oh my God. And I was like, why is this so strange? And I was like, oh, because no one ever fucking talks about Servant. Yeah. And no one ever talks about, you know, even the Shrink Next Door. There were, you know, different things that you would think would get a little more buzz if they were on something like Hulu. But I actually think there's almost an Apple TV Plus kind of style of thing. I haven't quite decided what I think that is yet, but I think like they do bring something to it. The fact that it's such a closed loop and it's like whatever development is happening within like the halls of the executives and the creative people working on the show. There's not really a feedback loop with fans or an audience of any kind, you know, and I know a lot of these shows are in their first season, so of course not. But I'm saying even beyond that, it really feels like I think we used to say this about Netflix too, in a different way, but it was like, oh, they're in a content creation phase. That right now, Apple TV Plus is creating library. It's creating stuff so that when you eventually do get hooked into their service, there's all this, you know, stuff that looks great that's sitting there. But the shortfall is that like these shows feel like they don't exist. You know,
and they also haven't told everybody that Apple TV is everywhere. That's what people also don't understand. There has to be a campaign that says, you want to watch Apple TV stuff? You want to look at your Apple purchase things? Did you know that if you don't have an Apple device, you could start purchasing things in this environment? Like you could still purchase iTunes things and they will be accessible from a PlayStation, an Xbox. People have no idea.
Right. Yeah, you think they have to change their whole ecosystem in order to get into, they hear the word Apple and they just go, okay. No thanks.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is, man. It's strange.
It's wild. To check out, I sent you guys a screenshot of a tweet that I was talking, like kind of sort of alluding to with the Jason Kilar conversation. I came across it after his interview I read, but like it's kind of breaking down you know, the different platforms and kind of what their MO is, you know, in terms of where they're at right now. And, you know, basically like saying like Netflix is volume, versatility, HBO Max is depth, variety, and storytelling. Disney Plus is franchise IP and library. Prime Video, library, aggressive ambition. Hulu, targeted focus, next day airings. Apple TV Plus, quality, consistency, and star power, which is spot on, by the way. Paramount Plus and Peacock, both library and sports. And that really does feel like what people are gravitating towards these services for.
As a true crime junkie, I think you have to add Dateline to Peacock. You have to just say Dateline. They've got like 30 seasons of murder on there for you. But
But yeah, I don't know. It's like these kind of things float a bit. And I think that, you know, the mass thing that we're describing in terms of like the most, you know, the common denominator of all of these things is always, I feel like is always Netflix, or more recently, I think, you know, Disney Plus, and I think HBO Max is like kind of like a silent killer right now. Like they're really growing, and like their content, their original programming too is like really consistently good too. And I don't know, something to watch for sure, but it'll be interesting to see kind of how this pool of options kind of thins out over the next 2 to 3 years, because I think that some are going to drop off.
I mean, I don't doubt that the aggressive ambition that's being attributed to Amazon Prime Video is like true, but I feel like when I flip through the services, that's the one where I'm the most likely to flip around and not choose anything and then go to one of the other services. Like I'll be like, I'll just be looking at what's the latest thing. And I go to Hulu and it's like, okay, it knows that we watch, Saturday Night Live or whatever. And so there's a new episode. So, Hulu's pretty, okay, here's the next episode of the stuff we've been watching. Yeah. Okay, Netflix, whatever. Netflix, it can be hard to find things, but we all know if we scroll through most of the menus, the top 10 of them, you'll find something that you like. But Amazon Prime, it's like I almost never watch their programming or even I guess what I'm saying is I don't emerge with much of a sense of what they represent. I do think something like the Lord of the Rings series that's coming, it could kind of put them on the map in terms of numbers, but it'll be sort of like, I don't know, like when I think it was Mandalorian that was the first big like jewel in the crown of Disney Plus as far as like franchise stuff. I feel like, people will be talking about, it's like when people signed up for HBO so they could watch Game of Thrones new season or something. I don't know. I don't know if Lord of the Rings is going to give Amazon an identity because they've been spending so many hundreds of millions and so much time on this thing. It can't be that all their programming is reflected by that, So, so what do you guys think? I mean, I know they've had original series that have been well regarded, or like The Tick or something like that. That's kind of entertaining and people like it, but it's not like you get a sense of what that name means in terms of the sort of shows they make. Or am I wrong?
I mean, it actually has nothing to do to me with the content and everything to do with that terrible interface. And the moment that they change that, I think it'll really affect the way that they get viewership. Like, it is unreal how terrible it looks. It feels like remember when Netflix first started? Or when you watch Netflix.
I was going to say that the first streaming version of Netflix had these really awkward buttons that just didn't look like it was going to work at all.
Or when you watch Netflix on an old smart TV. Mm-hmm. That's like it's like blocky and the suggestions aren't good. And sometimes when you're trying to literally trying to continue a show that you've already watched, it doesn't show up the way that
it doesn't remember. Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. But thanks to that's the crazy part about I guess people that have like Roku's and Apple TVs. With the Apple TV interface, anything I watch in Amazon will show I've watched the 6th episode, 7th episode show up. And I hear that Roku has a very similar system. So that's the only way I'm able to track anything on Amazon that I've ever watched. Anything beyond within the damn app is awful. And I kind of feel the same way on Netflix. Like I get lost on Netflix. I get things, I'll look at something, back out of it, and never be able to find it again. And if I don't remember the name of it, I'm done. I'm like, fuck it then. It's a Korean show with what happened? A zombie. I'm trying to remember the name of it and I can't find it. And I'm like,
right. And you're like, I just watched the first 2 episodes. But no, the funny thing is, I think you're right about the interface on Netflix being kind of clunky. I think when I say we've all gotten used to Netflix, it's just like, I at least know there's like 10 things that I want to see that are on Netflix. And so like when new Ozark is out, it was not anywhere in the top. I mean, I had to put in a search for it. I was shocked, but then within a couple of days, it was in the trending or whatever, But I guess what I'm saying is I knew I was going to watch Ozark. I knew Ozark. I knew when it was coming out. I know that's a Netflix show. I don't have that sense of anything on Amazon Prime, So maybe the interface, I do think it almost feels like it's an extension of shopping on Amazon. It doesn't feel like it's designed like a video experience at all.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. The Netflix thing is just abuse. You're used to going into the house and the person that you love punching you in the face. And once you say I'm done and go to something like HBO Max is easier for me. I don't know. Hulu is even better. Like you said, it's weird.
It's reasonable.
They tweak 1 or 2 things every couple months. And I'm like, this is getting better. Like it's better at tracking what I want. And the content's better. And it's I'm getting used to being like a Hulu person now. So
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, stop letting Netflix punch you in the face. That's what I'm saying.
They're like giving us cookies. They're like punching us in the face and then instantly giving us a choice of like 5 cookies that they know we like. And so we're like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I love you. You want to watch this 13-part series about zombies? Come on.
It's so weird. Like I couldn't just, I feel like I love the Netflix interface. Like I think it's probably one of my top 2 or 3 of all of them that I use. I do think the HBO Max interface is pretty good. I think the app itself is a little buggy. Like the interface is pretty nice. Yeah,
the music just plays randomly. Have you had that happen?
Mm-hmm.
That, and I feel like when you switch profiles a lot, like I have to sign in and out a lot, which is like weird. But yeah, I mean, the Amazon Prime interface it's very basic. And I think, there hasn't been a lot of focus on the user experience probably. And the key too is that like Apple and Amazon are the outliers because this is not all they do. And, in terms of the way these companies are broken into different smaller companies, we're talking about these huge things that like, this is their primary business function where, Amazon and Apple are a lot different in the way that they probably approach it because the vast majority of their profits and revenue have nothing to do with the platform of Apple TV Plus or of Amazon Prime Video. You know what I mean? Like it's a part of a service for Amazon, and for Apple it's an extension of an ecosystem like John was kind of saying earlier. But like, so I don't know, it's interesting. Like I feel the Netflix, and it's probably because of first entrant, like they have that head start and people are very used to it, and it's what most people tried first and most people have stuck with, so they benefit from that. And that's kind of what John's describing too, is like you just figure it out and you're like, okay, yeah, there's the show I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, it's interesting. Yeah, we'll see.
The thing I noticed with Netflix is scrolling through the options but moving fast enough so that it doesn't trigger the little trailer that starts to play on a show. Do you know what I mean? Like if it has just an image, but if you stay on it too long, it starts to play something. And sometimes I don't want that. I don't want the additional feedback or just input of video. It's like I just want to read the description and think, and then it's like, oh no, here's a scene from it.
I think that's a setting you can turn off.
Oh, maybe it is.
Really?
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I think I mentioned this before on the podcast. I like stumbled across an article, which is bad that it's not that clear.
Right.
But because I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh yeah, I turned that off. It does not do that for me.
All right. Also, I need to find that setting.
What about the difference between a scene and a trailer? That's weird.
Yeah.
Like 50% of the things aren't actual trailers for the whatever it is you're looking at. It'll start and it's like, I think you need to get yourself together, or I'll come back around and punch you in the face. And that's it. I'm like, what
is violence?
What am I supposed to because I only watch violence on Netflix. but I'm saying like it never represents what I'm watching either. It's never anything interesting. I sit and watch this stuff constantly because it's like a big thing to me. Like I'm like, this is hard for me to navigate through. And I think it's a type of like how you take in information.
I think you need to throw Netflix a curveball and like watch like a kid's movie or something, get out of that action algorithm, because there's a lot of violence with your Netflix experience.
So much
or punch Netflix back and see what happens.
Yeah.
The one thing as long as we're talking about this insanely geeky conversation about the interface of these apps, here's a Netflix thing I find hilarious is that like they'll have 4 or 5 different images for a show. Mm-hmm. And there's always 1 or 2 that are just completely nonsensical that like don't reflect the show at all, or it's just a picture of an odd background character or something. I always find that funny when you scroll past and you're like, why does this like super intense drama have like this goofy smiling picture of, it's like, oh, that's just because that's like one of the biggest actors in it and that's the picture they chose. But it seems like it's based around, like it's totally devoid of context. It's really just based around, hey, click on this, we're going to make this look like this is a thing that stars this person when they're barely associated with it. So
dude, we've talked about this before, but there is like, I have to send to you, there's an insanely amazing article from like last year, or maybe it was 2020, where they went deep into the thumbnail thing that you're talking about.
Cool.
And like, it is mind blowing how their algorithm decides what that thumbnail is.
Wow. That makes sense, because it will be often someone who's like popular right now. And here's a series they were in a few years ago as a minor character. And they're
here's the key. it's like, did you watch that series a couple of years ago, John? Did you thumbs up it, or did you finish the season? Because if you did, you're going to see that thumbnail. And I'll never see it. You know, like it's crazy. Like there are like dozens of thumbnails for these shows or for these movies. And it's all based on like what genres you mainly watch. They'll show you like an action shot or, you know, a specific person that you watch a lot of their movies on Netflix or series. It's crazy. It's just like, hey, it's just like porn, Ronald. It's just like porn.
I can attest to that because
that it's just like porn.
No, because they got the algorithm, like a part of their algorithm.
Yeah, I believe
is from the porn industry. Like that's what the article is about.
The tall guy from Squid Game with the suit on that gets him to play the game right in front of the train. It's telling me to watch all of his stuff, including that space show. And it keeps doing it. It's like, you think this guy's handsome. You need to watch him in more stuff. He's very charismatic. Did you know he was in Train to Busan? Did you know he was in this stuff? It's like, oh my God.
Because otherwise, if they threw up like Title X to you and you had no awareness of it, you would scroll right past it. You know, like that's the idea, is that like, oh, you saw that dude in Squid Game. Oh, and you also watched Train to Busan. So you'll know him if we show you something else he's in, and then you'll click it to at least read about it or see the trailer. And it is mind blowing. It is amazing. Cool, man. But yeah, I don't know, not to go too nerdy here.
No,
it's cool and a little bit creepy. Yeah,
it's
funny.
Yeah.
You know what? It's dude. It's creepy,
or maybe it's creepy and a little bit cool. Yeah,
it's the this is where we are right now. So
yeah.
Our machines know us. They love us. They want what's best for us.
Yes.
Mine the other day told me I said consume, and I was like, thank you, machine. Nothing wrong with that message.
So let's get out of this conversation.
Let's talk about some content now that we've been talking about interfaces.
Well, it's funny because I mentioned, you know, we talked about the title, you know, HBO Max and Hulu, two of the big, maybe four that we just discussed. And this week we kind of, you know, whether we were aware of it or not, kind of stumbled across the idea that the new Guillermo del Toro movie is on both platforms at the same time.
Yeah.
It was initially supposed to just be on HBO Max, but then apparently they did it on Hulu the same day. So you two watched Nightmare Alley.
Yes.
What did you think of it?
First thought was too long. That's the first thing I thought. But then I thought, Guillermo del Toro is one of the best storytellers of our time. And it doesn't matter what the subject is. He builds a world that's so intricate, so interesting, that everything on the screen is worth looking at. And I might miss something if I'm not paying attention close enough, that I feel like this ride felt like it was worth it. And then the gut punch at the end, you know, the final scene is like devastating to me. I don't know how you felt about it. God, man, it's like when you hear the last words of Bradley Cooper in a piece of a conversation that existed prior, it is devastating watching this movie. I loved it, if I could be completely honest. I thought it was a great movie. Wow. Just too long, too long, but it was beautiful. It was well told. Bradley Cooper's some of his best work I've ever seen. The whole cast was just really good. So I don't know. What'd you think, John?
I mean, I've always loved Guillermo del Toro. I think we all have loved him. And I believe on this show once I postulated, and I think the two of you sort of agreed with me, that he's like the filmmaker we love the most, whose movies are always pretty good. Somewhat mixed bag sometimes, but like the stuff you're talking about, Ronald, the textures, the what's in the frame, the control over mood and atmosphere that he has, and just the attention to detail, it's awe-inspiring, and it always makes his movies really engrossing. But I've always felt like, you know, with the exception, I mean, I think like The Shape of Water was a pretty solid like cinematic experience overall. I enjoyed both Hellboy movies. Really, there's not a Del Toro film that I haven't enjoyed on some level. I think Crimson Peak might be the one that was the most like of a rough ride for me. But I guess I'm just taking the long way around saying I've always loved him, even if I haven't loved his movies, you know, or if I haven't loved the final shape they've taken. And this is the one. I fucking loved this movie. I think this is my favorite Del Toro movie.
Wow.
I almost think easily. Like when I was thinking about his other movies today, I was like, wow, this movie really got me. It really got, and it not so much that you can kind of feel what's coming the whole movie. The movie sets it up like it's almost like a biblical situation. It's like this person's either going to rise above their nature or they're going to be punished for it, and you're going to see that play out. It's like when you're 2/3 into the movie and the protagonist hasn't had a redeeming moment. You're like, oh, this is like a morality fable about a nasty person, but it's all about like, what are they going to do when the chips are down? And we haven't seen this guy get called on his shit yet. Right. Bradley Cooper's amazing. Richard Jenkins is amazing and scary. Cate Blanchett is I mean, it's a great part for her.
Yeah, Cate Blanchett.
Willem Dafoe is amazing. He has like kind of a monologue over dinner in one scene that's just one of the most chilling scenes I've ever seen, and it's kind of got a dark humor to it. No, I just think this is a really accomplished piece of storytelling, and I agree with you, Ronald. Like it does feel a little bit like, at 2.5 hours, maybe this is stretched out a little bit, but it's one of those where you start to think, well, what would you lose? You'd lose some slow paced shots or something, or you'd lose some atmospheric moments where the camera's kind of moving through these scenes. I feel like all of those moments add to the movie. So I don't know. I do think maybe slow paced is the way I would put it rather than too long, but I think sometimes slow paced, it gives you time to really enjoy those details. And this is a movie where hints and clues and details are going to tip you off as to what's coming. But the actual story of what's going on is interesting enough that I kind of feel like, the slow pace just gives you more time to kind of soak in this world. I'm sure someone could come up with a 2-hour edit that would feel great of this movie, but I wouldn't want to be responsible for deciding what half hour to lose. And yes, we've kind of said it already, but this is a beautiful movie. This looked incredible on my television. And it just, blown away would mean I wasn't kind of expecting to like it. I did think maybe I was really going to dig this one, but I just, how you're watching movies sometimes just going, oh, when is something going to happen that's going to turn me off? Or when is it going to hit a false note or do something that takes me out of it? And at no point did that happen. Yeah.
Wow. Bradley Cooper is working on a different level. And that's what really blew my mind. Like, I think I knew he was good, but there's something that he's doing in this where like it's almost taking the thing that you love about Bradley Cooper and turning it on its head, which is like the idea that like tall alpha men in a situation can dominate like the whole environment. And what I found, so I do stand up and stuff like that, and you guys have done music and still do music. And you've probably been around these charismatic people that are like scary charismatic, who,
charismatic, we call it.
Yeah. We're all three of us, I'd say, are very charismatic people. And in our element, we can charm people. But imagine if you took that charm and were like, man, I could probably get $100,000 out of this person. You know what I mean? Like, there are people that we all know that take those charms and abuse them. And it's a story that just feels so close. If you're in the arts, or you've been in the arts, if you've been in, I even saw it when we worked at Apple. Like, you can do some really interesting things once you have the ear of someone.
Right. And
seeing Bradley turn that idea upside down, like take an idea. This is a handsome, tall, cool man destroying people with his charisma. But
by doing like an aw shucks thing and then kind of getting under their skin and then like learning what's up with them and then using it against them. Yeah. But Ronald, the thing you say about performers, I do think there's some real truth to that, because there's a couple moments in this movie where I was feeling there's a character who kind of ends up partnering with Bradley Cooper, who then sees how dark and deep his like, his manipulations really go. And I'm like, oh, wow, that feels so true, that you would sort of be attracted to somebody because you see how smart they are, Yeah. And then it would only be a few steps further that you would start to be scared of how smart they are, especially if you were kind of running a con with them or in the same circles with, I don't know. And I feel like with performers and an artist, there's a certain amount of that where it's like the same thing that draws you to somebody and makes you go, oh, wow, this person is going to be a star. Right. is a few degrees hotter, and it's like, oh man, this person is a dangerous narcissist who's just going to absorb everyone around him. I mean, not to be too lighthearted about this, but we were talking about this with Cosby last week. It's like a personality can be like totally malignant on one side, and the very things that attract you to them make them more powerful in their malignancy, and it's like you're just like stuck. And if you care about that person, or if you're in their sway, you're like, oh fuck, who am I dealing with now? This person is basically the devil on some level.
And things that people do to serve that idea that they are good at a thing is just, it feeds into that idea, John. And I think what I witnessed was a character study that it felt so personal, and it was about like carnies, essentially. Not to be weird, but like it should have been something that felt so far from my world. But when you're in art spaces, when you're in creative spaces, you see people like this all the time. You see people like that on TV. You see somebody like Trump who, he uses the idea that we're friends, right?
Right.
And manipulates people based on that principle when that they don't give a fuck about you.
Yeah, this guy's not your friend.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So I would not have thought that Guillermo could have pulled this off the way that he did. And with Bradley Cooper, of all people. I never doubted him as an actor. I loved him in damn near everything I've ever seen him in.
I know. I mean, I think he's one of those guys that like my son saw that I was watching this, and I was like, I'm going to watch it first before I decide if he would be able to handle it.
Right.
And he was like, Bradley Cooper is an underrated actor. And I had to stop and think for a second, because I was like, well, here's a guy who's been up for Oscars and has had his name attached to some giant projects. And it's like, yep, he still somehow is underrated. Yes. Like he's still I think you see a movie like this. And of course I always talk about the vocal performance as Rocket Raccoon. Yeah. There's like that, to me, that's like the spectrum, the super dramatic work he does, but then what he was able to do for that character in a Marvel movie that you didn't even need to cry in the middle of that movie, thinking about a raccoon's feelings, but Bradley Cooper did that. And I remember when, I know people are really down on Silver Linings Playbook these days, but I remember when we were talking about that movie, we all, I think, really liked how much he played this amped up guy with so much empathy and humor and passion. I don't know. I just think he's a much more interesting actor than the sort of pretty boy reputation would indicate. And like, for instance, I think you could put him in a box with someone like Brad Pitt and say like, oh, here's like a good looking guy who people don't realize how good he is. But I think Bradley Cooper actually is more diverse of an actor. I think Brad Pitt kind of makes every character into Brad Pitt, and that's fine. He does a great job of it. I think Bradley Cooper kind of, I love him to death. Hey, I'd say the same thing about Harrison Ford, and he's one of my favorites. But I'm just saying, Bradley Cooper kind of deliberately tries to transform and step outside, and I think play these unflattering character studies sometimes that he can really get into. I don't think he's afraid of being distasteful, as a character. Not that Brad Pitt is. I'm just saying that in the Bradley Cooper he takes it these interesting roles that are like, if you look at, he's done a certain amount of cheesy looking movies that I don't know if I'll ever watch, but the ones that I've latched onto are some of my favorite movies of that year, or, whatever. So,
another cool thing about it is with the change that Bradley makes in the movie, it makes you go back to think about some of the events that took place, and you wonder his hand in them. That's another cool thing about the movie. Like, once you see the shift, you're like, there were several things that happened within his proximity. What did he do? Right. Or did he do anything to affect any of these things? Did he make any of these things happen? So, it's super interesting the way that this plays out. And it's a movie that, again, I'm not insulting it. It felt a little too long for my blood, but I'm definitely 100% going to watch this movie again within the next 6 months. And the only reason why my wife probably won't watch it is because she'd probably fall asleep on it if we don't watch it before a certain time. So if I get her to watch it early, she'll
start at 3 in the afternoon.
You got it. That's actually a perfect time. If I get her to watch it on a weekend at like 3 o'clock, she'll be able to soak it all in. So I think this is, I don't want to use, I feel like I've been throwing this word around willy-nilly, but it's up there, man. He's Guillermo del Toro is working on another level with this one, and I suggest that, if you want to see a cautionary tale done right, that will keep opening up and opening up and opening up. This was worth checking out.
And if you want to see it in theaters again, it's being re-released in black and white. So do you have that?
Oh, it is. Well, I was going to say it's also a remake of a 1947 film, also called Nightmare Alley. They're both adapted from the same novel. That original film stars Tyrone Power. I read a little about it. I remember seeing it years and years ago, but I didn't remember much about the story of this film at all. But the ending is they put a happier spin on the bleak ending. I don't know if that's true to the book or not. But this movie has it, like you kind of alluded to it, Ronald. It's got an amazing ending. Like it knows exactly when to end. But even if the ending is a little bit more bleak than the 1947 version, I think it does still feel like it's got like a classic, like craftsmanship. It feels like a classic film. It feels like it could be a loving tribute to old movies kind of somehow in there, along with being its own thing. But clearly Del Toro just had fun doing something that wasn't expressly supernatural or genrefied. This is just a thriller. Right. So it's and it kind of feels like an adult movie in that sense. Like it's sort of, there's if you're talking about pre-existing IP and it's a noir novel from the first half of the 20th century, it's like, well, that's at least a different kind of IP than we're used to seeing made into movies. So
also super random, Guillermo del Toro's in that PlayStation game Death Stranding. He's really good at it. He's just like a random character.
Really?
Yeah, he's just in the game for couldn't have guessed. I'm like, that looks a lot like Guillermo del Toro. Has his accent, sounds like him. That's Guillermo del Toro.
Can you think of the one other thing he popped up in as a small acting role that was another funny, odd thing?
It's a fantasy thing, isn't it?
No, it's a comedy. It's a television comedy.
No, what was it?
Wasn't he one of the McPoyles on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? Wasn't there an episode where we see the McPoyle family?
What?
I think he was a McPoyle relative. I can't remember what his name was.
That's pretty funny, man. Wow.
But I think it's like he was a fan, and somehow it worked out that he could be in it. It was after Charlie. What's his name? Is it Charlie Day? That's the name of it.
Charlie
Day.
I
can't. I blends the character's name with the man's name. But remember, he was in Pacific Rim, and so I think after that, it became known that Del Toro was a big fan of the show.
Funny.
That's probably the reason Charlie Day was in that movie, was because Del Toro knew he could, pull off that, like a broad comedy character. But anyway, I just think that's kind of funny when these people pop up, like directors, especially the little cameos they get to do. It says a lot about who they are as people.
Cool. Wow. Okay.
All right.
I can't wait to see that. I mean, I gotta just carve out some time to check it out. But I also want to see the next thing that Ron's going to talk about, which also
tell us about the House of Gucci.
The Gucci.
Scarface is what I think about when I see this movie. House of Gucci is a portion of a story that's based on a podcast, if I'm not mistaken, right? A book or a podcast, or
I think it's a book.
Okay,
there may be a podcast too.
Yeah. There's a book and then a podcast that got made for it about the Gucci family, and in particular, the son who marries a woman who's like an aspiring lawyer who marries a woman of working class, and a series of unfortunate events occur. Now, it's the reason I said Scarface is just everything is so heightened in this film, from Jared Leto's accent. So here's why this is so crazy.
Where are you on Leto? He's the most polarizing piece of this movie, so I just want to know where you fall.
So I'm also, full disclosure, I mean, this is a little insider baseball. I've also started on the WeWork show that's on Apple TV that we're hopefully going to cover once it comes out. And he plays the leader of that organization.
Yeah, Adam Newman.
Can you commit too much? Is that possible? Is it possible to commit too much?
Yeah, I think especially if it's an actor and they're kind of known for that.
All I think of is Tropic Thunder when you say that.
Yeah, there's an overcommitment in this movie too. But what it does though is because it's so heightened. I believe that these people had big personalities. But let me give you a comparison. Al Pacino is Aldo Gucci in this, right?
Yeah.
Jared Leto, Pablo Gucci.
Yeah.
Al Pacino's subtle in this. Do you hear what I'm saying to you?
Yeah, you're saying that that Jared Leto being next to Al Pacino created a world where Al Pacino could seem subtle.
They're related to, like, Al Pacino is Pablo's. Aldo is Pablo's. Paolo.
This is a man who's
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Al Pacino is a man who's known mostly for saying "hooah."
Here's the problem: you won't be able to tell any of their names anyway because of how strange some of the interpretations of the accents are. Anyway, so that's.
I just want to know where you fall on Leto.
I don't know, man.
Yay or nay?
I can't figure it out. He makes me uncomfortable, and I think some of it is because, like.
So that's probably a nay.
No. Let me tell you what it is. This is something I've never thought of before. You know how you've been in the space sometimes where you have somebody that's very, very attractive. And because this person's so attractive, nobody's said like, man, you aren't that good at this thing. But because this person's so attractive, they're just kind of like, go do it. You're incredible at this. And I think that he has like this pretty person syndrome where, like, I feel like nobody's ever checked him. Nobody's ever checked Jared Leto. You think somebody's be like, that scene was shit, Jared?
Did you not see Fight Club? He's been checked. He's been checked into a pulp before. But even that, you're right, is like a beautiful boy getting to play a guy whose face gets all messed up. I do think there is some of that. I think though the one thing that I like this pretty person syndrome idea, but isn't it compounded with him in the sense of like method actor or whatever it is that he does?
Yes.
It's like it's pretty person meets like whatever like weird grungy ability to just do that more than anyone else on set that he has, like, so there is a certain amount of like, that's commitment, but that's genuine commitment. But maybe that's where the overcommitment you're talking about comes in. Is it like there's nobody around telling him to stop?
Everybody is overacting in this. So that's what you have to understand. But everybody's here, and Jared Leto is through the roof. And then you have Adam Driver that's trying to do something a little more nuanced, right? And Jeremy Irons is fucking amazing in everything, right? He's trying to do something a little more subtle. Al Pacino is even trying to do something, and then you got Lady Gaga who's doing very over the top, but she's good. That's the thing. There's something about it that kind of evens out to good at some point. Like you watch a couple like jarring scenes, and then she's like incredible in one scene, and then jarring in a couple 2 or 3, and then this movie's all over the place. It's all over the place, but I would recommend it.
I would say it sounds like you loved it.
So like where is it in the, Ridley Scott is an odd director to try to like track his movies, but like let's remember he's made some crazy films that operate on this almost B movie kitschy level before, and that's what House of Gucci looked to me like it might be doing with the kind of amped up characters and stuff. And I just recently appeared on the Projection Booth podcast talking about the movie The Counselor, which we've talked about on this show. You should go back and listen to that episode, folks. But like, I don't know. I just think there's something about him that he moves so fast that you almost don't notice how many weird little subgenres he's worked in. But it does seem like he can do this kind of amped up drama where he just lets actors, like he's an actor friendly director. I think he kind of likes to just let actors do what they're going to do. And if you've got like Leto and Gaga, and it's like an amped up, it's a contest of who can overact the most. Maybe, I don't know, but it's like this movie sounds strange. I guess is what I'm saying. Is every description of it, it sounds like a sort of trashy B movie or something. It does not sound like a big, a high priced drama from a big studio and a big director. So I'm kind of intrigued by that, and I would have run out and seen it in the theater. There was one night where I was just going to go see a movie, and I was like, I'll find something. There won't be anybody out. But then when I saw that it was like 2 hours and 2.5 hours plus, I was like, I don't know if I'm that interested in this movie, but maybe you can tell me that it doesn't feel long.
It feels very long.
Oh shoot.
It feels very long. That's the problem. So like I I say this sometimes. In this movie is a 2-hour long masterpiece. Mm-hmm. What we have though is like a director that didn't know when to say no for editing. But so I'll say Nightmare Alley, right? I agree with John. I don't know if it could have been edited down anymore, right? Versus House of Gucci, that could have been a 2-hour movie that we would have thought was like incredible. The thing is, this movie is going to start becoming like a cult classic. You can feel, because of how heightened everything is.
Yeah.
Jared Leto and Lady Gaga talking to each other in a scene is like, it's a lot of this. And so that alone makes this one of those movies that you have to see. You have to see to believe it. It's beautiful. It's a fucking gorgeous movie. Like one of the best looking movies I've seen in a while. Just like of scenery, of like some of the locations. They're just on the mansions that they're in, the Gucci stores that they're in, how they got how they were allowed to do some of this stuff is nuts. But it's another cautionary tale. It's another cautionary tale that's a lot more elaborate. But I love what Adam Driver's doing in it. And I love the relationship between Lady Gaga's character and Maurizio Gucci, played by Adam Driver. It's just, it was really well done. But it feels like there's a lot of extra footage, but then like transitions that just don't make any sense. Like when the pivotal event that leads to the violence in the movie happens, there's no lead up. Adam Driver makes the decision to make the decision, and that's it. There's no explanation. There's no backstory. There's no leading up to it. There's nothing to tell you that he feels a particular way about it. I don't know what Ridley Scott was doing in the editing bay, but
he was probably editing The Last Duel at the same time or something.
That's the correct answer, I think. Yeah.
Well,
or prepping the next whatever that we don't know about.
That makes sense.
His other two releases that come out this year.
G.I. Jane 2.
Yeah. But this one's absolutely, I shit on it, but it's absolutely worth checking out, man.
It's funny, like, and it's like I actually am very excited to see this movie. Like I actually think it's good. Like I'm gonna like it quite a bit from what I've heard or read, and you're describing it there, and some other people I know that have seen it. But like it's kind of crazy that I think I remember this correctly, that it's the only adult drama through the whole pandemic to crack $50 million.
I think I heard that too.
Which is a grade of movie or a type of movie that is like probably one of the top 2-3 types of films that is like on the chopping block in terms of these movies are not going to come out in theaters anymore. And or some variation of day and date kind of things, because this is one that did have a protected theatrical release, because it is Ridley Scott, and comparatively did very well, and and now it's in its video on demand stage of its release, which I think like you said, Ron, I do think an audience will find this movie.
Yes.
And it's kind of odd that of the 2 movies that he had come out this year, which I thought Last Duel was incredible, I haven't seen House of Gucci. And, but House of Gucci is the one that still is kind of hanging around for awards conversation and for Oscar stuff and things like that might actually still have traction and get nominations. So it's kind of funny that, of the 2, same kind of these adult dramas, different kinds of movies, but it would still both qualify as that kind of movie with like a mid-tier budget, things like that. And that's something about his movies too. And most of them, not all of them, especially the ones that came out in the last year, not massive budgets, but still adult dramas that just can't find an audience. Last Duel completely flops, and House of Gucci somehow kind of was the best performing adult drama of the last 2+ or basically last 2 years, which is wild.
It's crazy.
So, yeah,
Worth checking out, man. It's gonna have a place in my heart somehow, man.
I think the word I was looking for here is campy. It feels like it's got like a camp value to it, and that shit lives on in
forever
in people's hearts. If it's got like the star power mixed with the kind of camp value, especially if you're trying to make, Goodfellas or something, or trying to make The Godfather, and you make something kind of campy, that's delicious. Do you know what I mean? Like that's I don't know. People can get into it ironically and seriously, but also Lady Gaga, I feel like her audience is already primed to approach, like they want her to be kind of grand and overdone, I think, and I think she's going to sort of sense that, and possibly even was cast because of her ability to bring some reality to somebody larger than life like that. So it almost sounds like it shouldn't work, because Adam Driver is such a contained, like a fury keg that's got the lid just nailed down on it, but I don't know, what you're describing sounds very fun to me, especially now that I can watch it at home. I think I could get through that runtime much more easily.
It's a fun movie, man. It snuck up on me. We wound up finishing and I was like, I don't know, but I liked it. Something about it I like. It's so over the top, man. Oh god. So yeah,
cool.
House of Gucci.
And that's on video on demand. That's
video on demand, $20 right now on. It's not gonna be rentable until the 21st, so you have to buy it at this point on all the major services. But it's a $20 purchase, but it's Atmos, it's Dolby Vision. It's a gorgeous film. You will not regret it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that's going to wrap up the majority of the pod. I know you wanted to mention one more movie that you watched, right, Ronald?
Yeah. I just wanted to mention a kind of, I keep hearing about this movie over and over again. It's a horror film called Censor, with a actress by the name of Naeem Arger. She was in Wrath of Man, which that was the last thing I saw her in. But it's a strange kind of 80s homage, 70s homage, 60s homage to like a very particular type of horror film, that psychological thrillers that are kind of like giallo almost. It's about a character that is in the 80s. She's a film censor who has to process these films in London, like these very horrible movies with like nudity and snuff porn and stuff like this that she has to basically censor. So she gets a piece of film that is legitimately about a slice of her life that she's trying to block out of her head. Like, it makes no sense that it's almost the exact same circumstances, that the people in it look like her. It's a strange movie that is stuck in my brain. And, I heard about it last year at Sundance. I missed it, but I kept hearing it mentioned over and over and over again. I actually think it's on Hulu right now, if I'm not mistaken. Hulu coming in with the fire. Censor is now on Hulu. For I mean, I guess under the service for free. So like, check this movie out. It is disturbing. It is weird, and it's a cool commentary on censorship, particularly that period of time where like people are making these snuff films kind of for shoestring budgets and putting them out. And she has to take in all of this stuff constantly, watching people get assaulted, watching things get chopped off. It's a cool commentary on horror and its effects on us, but also a really cool film that is about the psychological impact of all that stuff. Censor.
No, I'm cool. I'm looking it up right now. It sounds really interesting. So
yeah, man, it's
for the heads up on that.
Yeah, man. That's it. That's all I got in the can for me. What about you
I
guys?
was going to mention real quick. We should probably come back to this when it's maybe I've seen it all if you watch Ronald. But John mentioned Archive 81 last week, and I did I'm halfway through that right now.
How you liking it? I want to see it.
I'm digging it. I think it's really good so far. Or at least very engaging. You know, it's like I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of it. But another one of these, like, I have no idea what this was, and it's like it's constantly in Netflix's top 10, and it's you know, a big thing for them now that they're actually promoting everywhere, like we were talking about before. And I'm seeing like ads for it on different things. I heard a podcast with an ad for it the other day, and it's like, wow, moving quick. But yeah, it's a pretty cool show on Netflix right now. But yeah, otherwise, just not a lot of newness on this side. Just kind of the usuals, the weekly ones I've been watching. But I will watch House of Gucci and Nightmare Alley, hopefully by next week's podcast. Cool. Movieshmovie.com is the website. You can hit us up there and subscribe to the podcast directly on that page from all of our various podcast platforms that we are on, you know, those things. Also, that you can link to the YouTube from there and watch this video that you're maybe listening to, maybe watching, but you can do the next one and then the next one and the next one if you click the subscribe button on the YouTube channel. And so just do that. And if you subscribe to the podcast, the audio, that should be like a slogan or something.
You're right.
So fucking
just do that. That's our spin on it. Just do that.
If you subscribe to the podcast, the audio podcast on any platform that has reviews, ratings, if you could leave one, we'd really appreciate it. If there's a share button in the app, maybe that you're listening to us on, you know, hit that little box with the up arrow icon. You know, that's usually a share icon. And maybe send it to a friend or two, maybe somebody you think that might listen to a show like ours. And we thank you in advance for doing that. But yeah, we'll be back next week. I'm not sure what we're going to be talking about, but it'll be fun and exciting as always. And so we'll see you guys in a week. And yeah, as always, you made our day. Thanks.